Welcome to Healing the Shadow. So I'm Bex, I'm a counselor and a somatic coach, and I help people regulate their nervous systems, process emotions, heal trauma, and rewire patterns that go beyond talk therapy. Over the years, I've been realizing something that actually feels genuinely life-changing, and that's many people who carry this sort of quiet, nagging sense that something is wrong with them, right? Or that something crucial is missing in their healing. And they're stuck in these repeating patterns because they're being run by one or more of the hidden archetypes that I see in my work again and again. Now, most of the methods that people have been using miss key pieces of the puzzle. So in this class, I want to show you the 5 archetypes that are the reason behind why many of the people that I work with come to me. So you're in the right place if you are caught in repeating loops of emotions, behaviors, and thinking patterns. If you feel like you self-sabotage in your healing, or if you feel like your healing isn't working or something important is missing, and you're ready to discover why this is happening, to learn about some completely new approaches that are science-backed and proven, and build some self-compassion and find some ways to set yourself free. So coming up, we will explore what are archetypes. We'll take a quiz. We will meet the 5 archetypes and then explore the path to healing. So my hope is that this class will feel like someone has finally translated your inner world and given you some hope for change. So rooted in the internal family systems model, this exploration into archetypes today honors this idea that we are all made of multitudes. So rather than the concept that you are one mind and one personality, which a lot of therapeutic modalities and models draw from, which can actually feel like you are the problem or you're broken or you're to be pathologized or diagnosed, this system and the way that I work explains that you are not one fixed identity, but you're this beautifully layered system of different parts. And each part was shaped by your experiences. And we call them protective parts and wounded parts. So common to all of us is everybody has a core self. And the self isn't a part of you, but the essence of you. And it's actually a set of qualities. So you know you're in self when you notice these 8 C's, these qualities are present. So calm, curious, clear, compassionate, confident, courageous, creative, and connected. So those of you who are in my membership already or who have stepped into working with the nervous system will maybe notice the crossover here with these 8 C's, these qualities of self, and the ventral vagal state of your nervous system, rest, digest, and restore. So when we are in self, we are regulated. And this does not mean the absence of tricky emotions, just to set that record straight. So we all have this core self. Some of us are in self most of the time, but many are not. And if experiencing those 8 C's feels unfamiliar or just not common for you, please know that you are not alone, because the self is often obscured by various parts that have taken on protective or wounded roles due to your life experiences. Now, we all have protective parts that form in response to pain or trauma or unmet needs. And over time, these parts take on distinct voices, behaviors, and roles. And these are the parts that we are going to work with today. Now, another type of part, just to put our protective parts in context, are exiles. So these parts hold painful memories and emotions, often from trauma, and they're pushed away to protect us from feeling those overwhelming feelings, right? They're tender and they're vulnerable, and they carry unmet needs and pain. And the protective parts are trying to control and organize our lives to prevent the exiles or the wounded parts from being triggered. So when we do this work to help the archetype parts heal, the protective parts, we're also able to heal the deepest wounds that we carry and that they protect. Okay, so now that I have given you a whirlwind introduction to parts work, shadow work, right, IFS, and its key concepts, let's talk about something really important: how and why archetypes form. Because this explains almost everything about why you get stuck and why you repeat patterns and why you sabotage. When you go through overwhelming experiences, ones that are outside of your nervous system's capacity to cope with, especially if they happen repeatedly or take place during childhood, your nervous system has to adapt really quickly. And it does that by developing trauma or stress responses like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and functional freeze. So these responses are initiated by your nervous system outside of your conscious choosing or control. But the part that most people never get told is that when we aren't supported through those experiences adequately, or when those stress responses are not completed, those trauma responses don't stay as moments. So if the stress keeps happening or the threat response is not processed, they evolve into patterns. So patterns are the ways that we respond to things and the lens through which we interpret our worlds. And if the patterns keep happening, they evolve into archetypes. So these are our protective parts, loyal, hard-working inner parts. So these are the shadow archetypes that we're talking about today. And each one of these parts is doing something very specific. They're trying to keep you safe and protect you from ever feeling that original pain again. So regardless of how old you are now, or whether the initial stresses that caused the formation of these parts of you has passed, your nervous system is a prediction machine. So it superimposes the experiences of your past onto your present and onto your future. So your archetypes and your reactions once helped you survive, but they're probably now a source of pain and frustration. Each of the archetypes that we'll meet today are tied directly to nervous system states, so fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and functional freeze. When these responses happen over and over, you start to identify with them. So you start believing, this is just who I am. Like, I'm too sensitive. I'm someone who can't handle stress like other people, right? But none of that is you. And today we'll meet those archetypes, learn their purpose, and begin the process of leading them home. Okay, we're going to start with a quiz that will help you determine your dominant archetype. So a note here that you will likely have more than one of these archetype parts. That's really, really normal. I have all 5 and more. So the quiz is going to show you your most dominant down to your least dominant archetype. So I've got 10 questions for you, and you just need to jot down your answer. So it'll be either A, B, C, D, or E. So try not to think too hard about your response, just go with your gut. And if you feel really strongly that more than one answer is right for you, you can jot down 2 letters. So I'll move fairly quickly. You can hit pause if you need more time to mull over your answer. So as you answer, notice what your body does too. Does it clench, soften, get defensive? That's data. My invitation to you is to be gentle and curious with yourself as you answer these questions. Okay. Question 1, how do you usually wake up? A, anxious, mind already racing, stomach swirling. B, checking messages immediately and making sure that no one needs anything from me or worrying about family. C, planning the day, notes app and calendar open. D, exhausted, heavy, snoozing my alarm, I don't want to get up. Or E, critiquing myself within 30 seconds. Right? I should have gone to bed earlier. Question 2, what is your relationship with rest? A, I lie down to rest, but my mind overthinks and my body feels wired instead of relaxed. B, I feel uneasy resting if someone might need me or if being unavailable could upset or disappoint someone. C, rest feels unproductive. I feel guilty. I'd rather stay busy. D, I crash, dissociate, or scroll instead of truly resting. Or E, rest feels uncomfortable because I start judging myself. Question 3, what do you do when conflict appears? A, overthink what I said, I feel anxious or try to avoid it. B, instantly appease or smooth things over, even if I disagree. C, take charge, fix it, solve it. D, shut down, withdraw, or numb out. Or E, replay the conflict later and blame myself harshly. Question 4, which body response do you recognize most often, even if you've never connected it to stress before? A jittery, wired feeling with shallow breath or stomach fluttering. B, throat tightness or jaw clenching, especially if around other people. C, ongoing jaw, neck, or shoulder tension, bursts of energy and then crashes. D, heavy limbs, brain fog, low motivation, or emotional numbness. E, a sinking, shrinking feeling in the chest or stomach when self-judging. Okay, question 5, when you're overwhelmed, what happens first? A, my thoughts spiral. I go straight into what if and feel panicky. B, I turn into a caretaker, even when I'm the one who needs support. C, I push harder, take on more, or try to power through. D, I freeze, shut down, or can't start anything. Or E, I blame myself mentally or compare myself to others' ability to function. Question 6. What have you already tried to fix things? A, supplements, meditation, apps, reassurance seeking, Googling all the things, avoiding things. B, boundary books, communication scripts, affirmations. C, mindfulness, productivity, hacks, over-organizing, time blocking, rest days that turn into catch-up days, goal setting. D, CBT, doctor's tests, adrenal support, motivation hacks. Or E, affirmations, being nicer to myself, gratitude lists. Question 7, how do you handle uncertainty? A, I try to plan, control, and predict everything. B, I check others' reactions and stress about how others are coping. C, I take control and try to manage the outcome. D, I avoid decisions and hope things resolve themselves. Or E, I assume I'll mess it up. Question 8, what's your secret fear? The one that you really say. A, something bad will happen and I won't be ready or cope. I can't let my guard down. B, if I say no, I'll be rejected. My needs can wait. I don't want to upset anyone. I have to keep the peace. C, if I slow down, everything will fall apart. My value comes from what I do. D, I'll never get my energy or motivation back. I should be able to do this. I'm failing. E, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. I'm not good enough. Question 9, what do you do in relationships? A, overanalyze everything they say and worry I'll lose them. B, overgive until I'm resentful. C, take responsibility for everything. D, pull away, shut down, or go numb. Or E, feel insecure, compare, and self-judge. Now, final question, question 10, what's your I can't believe I do this habit? A, Googling worst case scenarios or symptoms late at night. B, saying yes immediately and then wishing I'd said no. C, taking on extra tasks or staying up late studying and working. D, doom scrolling when I have other things to do. Or E, comparing my life to people on social media and researching weight loss or wrinkle products too often? Well, it can feel really heavy or emotional when we explore the archetypes in this next step and with the results of this quiz. So I really want to stress the point here that these archetypes are not bad. There are no bad parts of you. The archetypes may flare up even just listening to this today. So I want to encourage and invite you to hold a seat in self, to be curious and compassionate, and to tend to your parts. To step away, take a drink, a breather, or do whatever you need along the way to care for yourself. So count up now the number of A's, B's, C's, D's, and E's that you have. The one that you scored the highest in is the part that's been running your survival patterns the loudest or most frequently. You may have a joint equal for first place or some that are not far behind. There may not be much in it between some of your results. And you will probably resonate with more than one archetype. So you want to tune in to each one. And as we meet each one, I'll give you what it does, what it's protecting, and the body proof that it's active. Let's all take a collective breath, bit of a hand on heart, holding that seat in self, some compassion. If you scored mostly A's, your dominant archetype is the anticipator. Our anticipators love to plan and preempt and imagine what might go wrong. They're often worrying about things and seeking reassurance. Anticipators drive us to avoid uncertainty, sometimes difficult emotions, or situations that feel unknown or that trigger anxiety. Many anticipators call themselves warriors. They struggle to rest, switch off, and truly relax. When your anticipator part is active, your nervous system is in flight mode, sympathetic, always scanning, predicting, and preparing. So this is your nervous system in sympathetic dominant state. So here are just a few examples of what this part feels like and how it shows up in the body. So tight chest, shallow breathing, breath holding, stomach symptoms, jittery or restless energy, jaw, neck, and upper body tension. So the presence of these symptoms is the presence of the anticipator. And if you've got any of these symptoms and wondered why you do it, this part is likely behind them. So here's some of these weird symptoms that are explained by this part: waking at 3 to 4, teeth grinding, neck stiffness at the base of the skull, tingling in fingers, breath holding. So the anticipator actually develops because safety once felt unpredictable. Sometimes this comes from childhood. So maybe you had caregivers who were unpredictable, who didn't know how to co-regulate with you and support you through stress, or who weren't regulated themselves. So remember, our little nervous systems pick up on the nervous systems of others. Sometimes it comes from a later experience, so a health scare or a loss or a shock that shattered your sense of control. And then your nervous system learned this cool rule: uncertainty isn't safe. So this part stepped in, and it wants certainty and control. So this part of you carries this core wounding of feeling like the world is unpredictable and unsafe. And so it intelligently learned to scan, predict, and sound the alarm to protect you from being blindsided and from feeling out of control. Nothing about this pattern is your fault. It is a survival adaptation that worked once, but is probably exhausting now. Our anticipator parts are a cue that our nervous systems need safety, gentle down regulation, and a chance to complete the stress response and return to the breath in the present. We're going to come to the healing pathway for the anticipator soon, but first we're going to move on to the next archetype. If you scored mostly B's, your dominant archetype is the appeaser. So this is the part of you that keeps the peace, the empath, the overgiver. So our appeasers have a habit of automatically saying yes and then feeling overwhelmed or resentful. They monitor and absorb other people's moods and reactions, over-explaining, apologizing, softening or stifling communication, avoiding conflict, and struggling with boundaries. They keep others comfortable, over-giving in relationships, but then struggling to identify personal needs or preferences. This is the part that slowly severs our connection to ourselves in order to keep connection to others. This is your nervous system in a mixed state. Part activated, sympathetic, part collapsed, dorsal vagal. In the body, the appeaser often shows up as a tight jaw, collapsed or forward-leaning posture, fatigue after social interactions, numbness or disconnection from your own body cues and needs. Your body is constantly leaning toward others, and there's very little left for you. So here's some symptoms you might have been struggling to make sense of that are actually connected to the appeaser. So the lump in the throat, teeth grinding, chronic shoulder elevation, tension headaches. So just to nerd out a little bit on the lump in the throat and some of those jaw symptoms is when the appeaser is active, the body is prioritizing connection over expression. So muscles around your jaw and your tongue and your throat subtly constrict to inhibit your voice. So where does this protective archetype come from? So the appeaser develops when love or safety once felt conditional, when belonging depended on being easy, helpful, agreeable, and not needing too much. You often had emotional caretaking roles in childhood, parentification, maybe feeling outcast or struggling to fit in. So the appeaser is incredibly skilled, but it's costly. So this is a survival strategy rooted in longing for connection and a core wound of feeling unworthy or unloved or rejected. So this part of you is doing the job of trying to keep you safe, loved, connected to, and valued by others. But often for many of us with appeaser parts, the body will start to protest through fatigue and numbness or resentment. And that might be where you're at now. Our appeaser parts are a cue that our nervous systems need safety, to gently orient back to our own bodies, to soothe ourselves, and to protect and cleanse our energy. Okay, we'll come back to the healing path, but let's move to the next archetype. If you scored mostly C's, this is the achiever. This is the part of you that's capable and driven and responsible and the one that just keeps going even when you're exhausted. So our achievers keep us overworking and staying constantly busy. They have you taking responsibility for things that aren't yours. And your achiever part is the one that just cannot seem to rest without guilt. So when your partner arrives home and you spring up off the couch and start cleaning something, right? Or when you're watching TV, but you're scrolling your phone at the same time. So our achievers feel this immense pressure to get things right or to be doing, and they make you push through exhaustion, and they struggle to ask for or accept support. And they do love to have you thinking your way through emotions instead of feeling them. So when your achiever is active, your nervous system will be in a sympathetic dominant state, or at times will slip into a kind of functional freeze. In the body, the achiever often shows up as chronic tension in the jaw, shallow breathing and breath holding, gut issues, adrenaline-driven energy, followed by crashes, and maybe difficulty sensing hunger or fatigue or limits. So here are some of the weird symptoms explained by this part. Low back pain, clenching glutes or core unconsciously, neck pain, and a shoulder lift on your dominant side, which is often the right, delayed emotional reactions. So I just want to nerd out with you for 1 second on one symptom here, just to show you how nuanced and deep this stuff runs, and also why we do this unconscious work in our healing. So I want to look at just the shoulder lift or shoulder pain on the right side. Okay, so this archetype is left brain dominant, and that translates to right body bracing. So the left hemisphere is dominant for planning, sequencing, language, goal-directed behavior, self-control, and the left side of the brain primarily controls the right side of the body. So when safety for you means doing and achieving, your nervous system keeps your left brain highly active and maintains motor readiness on the right side. And it braces that dominant shoulder for output. And so that right-handed right shoulder lift often ends up also coming with pain between the shoulder blades, jaw clenching, teeth grinding, sometimes more on the right side, a sense of holding yourself together, irritation when others are inefficient, guilt when resting, and feeling safest when busy. I mean, the layers that intersect here between parts work and beliefs and nervous system and mind, body, it is mind-blowing. So the achiever develops when doing once felt safer than being. So many achievers carried too much too young, and they learned how to perform and manage and hold it together. So the achiever is guarding against feeling unworthy, the discomfort that comes with rest or stillness, the fear of failure or falling apart, and the vulnerability of needing others. So this was a brilliant adaptation. It helped you survive, it helped you succeed, but a nervous system that never gets too powered down eventually starts to shut off in other ways. And insight alone does not teach the body that rest is safe and that worth doesn't need to be earned. Our achiever parts are a cue that our nervous system needs safety to complete our stress responses and make it so that slowing down feels safe, to disentangle our worth from doing, achieving, pushing, and being busy, and to trust that we have the capacity, or we can learn the capacity, to hold what lies in the stillness. If you scored mostly Ds, your dominant archetype is the suppressor. So this is the part of you that shuts down and feels stuck, the one that goes quiet and withdraws, the one that uses numbing techniques like scrolling or a glass of wine. And you often label it as unmotivated or lazy or broken, but that is not what is happening here. So our suppressors struggle to initiate tasks, they zone out, they scroll, sometimes they dissociate entirely. They make us withdraw from people or the things we used to love. And often they're only able to move when someone needs something or when we're stressed or running late. So this is a nervous system that has moved toward or is in a freeze or dorsal vagal response. Yeah, so freeze is what happens when there has been too much for too long and there's no clear way out, so the body conserves energy. So in the body, the suppressor often feels like heavy limbs or a weighted body, brain fog or blankness, chronic fatigue or low energy, numbness, flat effect. This is your body or your nervous system's way, this part's way of saying no. The weird symptoms explained by this part: sighing frequently, cold hands and feet. So the suppressor often develops after really long periods of survival. So when you've been strong for too long, when you've carried emotional weight without support, when you've had to suppress your needs or grief or exhaustion, or you've lived through ongoing stress or trauma. And also when fight or flight, so sympathetic activation, it's not an option for you. So when you haven't been able to stand up for yourself or to speak out or to leave a situation. So at some point the system says, I can't keep doing this. And so instead of pushing harder, it pulls on the brakes. So despite how truly hard this feels, this clever little part of you is trying to shield you from overcapacity, from carrying too much for too long, from feeling the depths of your emotions, from being overwhelmed by pain, from continuing to overfunction, Or this is a hard one to swallow, but it protects us from getting our hopes up and making progress in our healing if that risks visibility or hope, if it's known that in the past, when things got good, they got bad. Our suppressor parts are a cue that our nervous systems need safety to gently up-regulate our energy in slow and safe ways, to trust that we have the capacity or that we can build it for more, and that we will not leave them alone with their pain. The final archetype. If you scored mostly ease, the critic is your dominant archetype. So your critic is no stranger to harsh self-talk, to throwing you into imposter syndrome. It has you comparing yourself to others, avoiding visibility, avoiding trying new things. It also pushes you to perfectionism, body checking, body shaming. And it's the one that we don't like to admit is also judging others, often silently. So your nervous system here is in a mixed state of sympathetic overload with the scanning and that fight mode with dorsal, so often with a sense of shame or low mood. It feels like a sinking feeling in your chest or stomach, collapsing posture, avoiding eye contact, freeze response when exposed or evaluated, and body tension during self-scrutiny. Some of the weird symptoms explained by this part are sudden nausea, tension in the tongue and the floor of the mouth, and hyper-awareness of tone, wording, and facial expression. So this archetype often comes to be because you've had experiences of shame or criticism or humiliation, caregivers with high standards paired with low emotional safety, feeling exposed or bullied or judged, learning that self-attack prevented external attack, or self-critical parents. So it isn't necessary that the parent was critical to you. They may have been critical of themselves, and that was your modeling. And this part has this outdated idea that it can protect you by criticizing you first, so you can avoid the pain of others seeing your flaws. So there can be a wound that's really rooted in shame and worth. And so it protects you. This critic protects you from feeling unworthy, from being exposed, judged, being hurt by others, losing connection to others. Our critic parts are a cue that our nervous systems need safety, non-judgment, and acceptance to connect with ourselves and others with compassion. So we're going to come to the healing pathway for the archetypes really soon. But first, let's take a big breath. Just have a think about what came up for you as you heard about each of the 5 archetypes. Any light bulbs, any compassion, any parts that it triggered. So whatever you're feeling, can you tend to your nervous system, whether it's a breath, a drink, a shake, a brushing off of your body, some butterfly taps, a big hug for yourself. So now I actually want to show you about how these archetypes actually show up in a day in your life. So I'm going to lead you through a day, just an example of someone's day. So you wake up and check your emails. There's already a mental list running. You go straight into motion. We are the achiever, sympathetic. The morning is a hustle. You scan your calendar, to-do list, chugging coffee, skip breakfast, and tell yourself you'll eat later. Our achiever is still in action. At work, you burn through jobs. You take on more than planned because it's faster and easier if you do it. And you can see how stressed others are. Lunch is eaten at your desk. We have a combo. We have our achiever and our appeaser working in sympathetic and fawn responses of the nervous system. By mid-afternoon, your jaw is clenched, shoulders high, you push harder, keep going, get to the end of the day so you can have a break. We have the achiever again, sympathetic drive. So next, you get home and you try to rest, but you can't fully switch off. You sit on the couch scrolling. You feel a bit fidgety and unsettled, and you just cannot get motivated to cook dinner. We have sympathetic and dorsal vagal. So we've got the achiever sitting there, but we've got our suppressor. And in bed, the day replays. You try to sleep, you're rolling over, adding notes to your task list for tomorrow. Okay, we have our sympathetic drive again. So this is an example of the primary driver, the primary archetype that's leading this person's life is the achiever, with some supporting roles of the suppressor and the appeaser. So this person's living in a sympathetic dominant state, always on. But we get a hint in the evening that burnout could be on the cards. Now, there is often a real sense of inner chaos and turmoil in us when we have days like these. So, in the next day, in the life example, you're going to see how turbulent it is when there's conflict between parts. So, in this example, we're going to look at the achiever and suppressor, and they have seemingly opposite needs and they make you do different things, right? So, one's trying to push you and the other's trying to slam on the brakes. But what they have in common is their fears and what they're trying to protect, both trying to protect you from a sense of shame or worthlessness or pain. So here's an example of someone in that very mixed presentation. It looks like they're driven almost equally by all of the archetypes. Okay, so you wake up already dreading the day, exhausted, pressing snooze on your alarm 6 times. There's our suppressor, dorsal vagal freeze. Now that you're running late, you finally bolt out of bed. You rush around the house getting ready, pour a coffee, skip breakfast, and race to work. So now we've got the sympathetic. At work, you're getting through your to-do list, totally overwhelmed. There's 50 emails waiting. You skip lunch because you squeeze in a last-minute task for your boss. So there's our achiever and our appeaser, sympathetic and fawn. 6 p.m., you're finally leaving. You're way too tired to cook, so you order Uber Eats or you hit the drive-through and you feel instantly guilty and then berate yourself for another shit day of eating and overload. So we've got our critic coming through and our suppressor. You get home and you lie on the couch, you put on Netflix, you take 20 minutes to pick a show, and then you watch it while you're scrolling your phone. It's time for bed, but you scroll for another hour. So that's our suppressor. That's functional freeze in a way. So there's still the mind still racing and busy. We're probably not feeling really calm, but there's a suppression, kind of the body not having that ability to get going. And so finally, you drop into bed, but your brain won't switch off. You worry about things you said, you worry about what you got to do tomorrow, and you critique yourself. So now we're sympathetic, we've got anticipator, we've got achiever, we've got the critic. So this person is actually living in a functional freeze dynamic. So they fluctuate between activation that's driven by nervous system stress and then collapse. So most people see this pattern and go, oh, they need stress management type tools as an approach. But actually, what is happening here is the system being pulled to freeze. So the more activating sympathetic archetypes, they're being recruited to pull the person out of freeze using stress or people pleasing or shame as the motivator. So for this person, because of the presence of the suppressor type being so active, we would address the suppressor and the dorsal vagal as a priority. We get stuck in our healing, not because we are lazy or broken or lacking willpower, but because we have archetypes that step in and take over and we're not in self-energy. So if you believe that the person that you are right now isn't who you want to be, or that life isn't how you want it to be, then that focus is to be someone else and to be somewhere else, right? We try to fix our patterns through force and often using tools that are not correctly matched to our nervous system and the underlying needs of our parts. And what we're telling ourselves by doing that and believing that is that we're not okay, we're not safe. If you have these parts of you that are taking the wheel, they can only keep you repeating patterns that once worked. They're very young parts a lot of the time. They have fears and needs, and often ones that sit in your unconscious. So to be free, they need a completely different approach. And after 16 years and thousands of hours working with people, and after myself overcoming panic attacks and daily anxiety and low self-worth and depression and trauma, I have learned that healing comes when we work not just on our thoughts or our mindset, but collectively with our nervous systems, physical bodies, with our parts, and with somatic practices that go below the conscious layers. And that's because it is those things that drive over 80% of how we think, feel, and act. So I found that the path to freedom is in recognizing that we are these beautiful, multi-layered beings. So I know that this might feel really hard to hold, but healing happens in being with ourselves and our parts, and not in fighting against them and believing that we're fundamentally broken and in need of constant fixing. It's beginning to help these archetypes to heal and help them to ease back so that we can be more self-led. And you can ask your archetype, why do you do what you do? What experiences in your life are you holding on to that led you to doing this thing that you do inside me? What is this part of you really afraid of? What is this part of you trying to protect you from? What does it need? And the key to healing for many of us is in releasing the judgment and the blame and the shame and the resistance towards these parts of ourselves. So their patterns may no longer serve you, but their original intent was rooted in care. So in working in this way, we move to the core of our patterns and our parts. So this workshop was designed to give you the what and the why. So what it is that's behind over 80% of your emotions, beliefs, and behaviors, and why your patterns make sense and keep you looping. So now I want to invite you to join me in the how and to take those steps to healing. So what most people need next, it's not more information, it's a guided path. And so over the last few months, I've been going over the thousands of hours I've spent working with clients and members, and I went through the nearly 300 resources that are inside the Journey to Wellness membership. And I created these 5-week guided journeys. So each one is designed around a specific archetype. So instead of trying to figure out what to watch, what to practice, what applies to you, or where to begin, there's no analysis paralysis, there's no overwhelm. You're simply guided week by week for 5 weeks. So each week what I do is gently lead you through a core class or a course that fits your archetype, a simple somatic practice that works with your nervous system, and a brain-based exercise for how your archetype's brain works. So you're going to learn how to work with your nervous system properly, how to rewire your thinking patterns, and how to feel safe in your body. It is self-paced, so there's no pressure to keep up. It's all sent to your inbox. And you're not going to do it alone. I'll be checking in during the journey, and you'll be held in the community that understands this work. So if you're already a member, this 5-week journey is included. There's nothing extra to buy. If you're new here, a gentle word about the investment, because I really want to put your nervous system at ease right away. This is not a high-ticket program. There's no long-term contract. You're not locked in. The investment to join the 5 weeks and the membership as a whole is $58, and it covers the first 3 months of your membership. So it's actually enough time for you to do at least 2 of the pathways if you want to go on more than one archetype journey. So after that, it's $87 every 3 months. So you can keep going, you can come to the lives, you can do another journey, and that's it. You can cancel anytime. If you join through this workshop, you'll also receive a live bonus workshop. It's coming up this week. So we're going to help map the path, and you can ask anything you want. And then there's also a 3-day free trial for everyone who's here. So you can explore the membership in general and just feel into whether it's right for you. You'll also get $29 off your first payment, so making it that $58 instead of $87 as just a really big thank you for being here live. And so more than anything, I really want you to know this. You won't be left alone inside this work. There's a community of support, access to me, there's tools available whenever you need them, and especially if you do join now, you will be joining us for that 5-week journey from the very beginning if you'd like to. So you don't need to rush this decision, just notice what your body's responding to. So if something in you feels relieved by this idea of being guided, then that's the part that this was created for. So you can head over to the website and join the membership now with the code Archetype. So that means you'll automatically get that discount. You'll be included in the 5-week journey. So that code expires in a week. And as we wrap up, I just want to encourage you again here that these parts of you are not broken. They are not bad. They are running an old script to keep you safe. And when you work with your body, your nervous system, your unconscious, you can free these parts and you can become this more self-energy, calm, curious, compassionate, regulated person. So I want to thank you for showing up for yourself and your parts today. And I encourage you when you leave this class to go and do something that feels compassionate and loving and tend to yourself.